Hello YouTube, my name is Fag. Welcome to my channel. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And here we go. 10 controversial Super Nintendo Entertainment System games by SNEStalgia. Now, let's see what kind of controversial games there are, shall we? Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun dun dun. Damn, I love the Turtles game. I played that in arcade down the how many times. Star Fox, love Star Fox.
The Super Nintendo, my favorite console. I could go on for hours about how much it means to me, and maybe someday I will. But for now, I'll say some of my fondest memories are being a kid during summer vacation and playing the Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo.
If you guys ever get one of these or have one, you ought to try it out. The NES era of games was probably one of the best eras around, I think. They were doing a lot of experimenting at that time. A lot of stuff that's commonplace now is just now coming out at that time. So, it's pretty interesting. Y'all give it a try if you ever get a chance to.
Nintendo received overwhelmingly positive reviews and became a global success, emerging as the best-selling console of the 16-bit era, despite launching relatively late and facing tough competition from Sega's Genesis in North America and Europe. The Super Nintendo remained a favorite well into the 32-bit era, selling 49 million units worldwide by the time it was discontinued in 2003. Despite being sold...
Oh, well, lasted that long? I thought we got to continue to the mid-90s, but hey, more power to it. Because by then you had a Nintendo 64, and I think the GameCube was in the works by then too, possibly. Oh, maybe. I don't remember right off the exact chronological time, but you know what I mean.
So popular, not all of its games were spotless. So let's take a look at 10 controversial Super Nintendo games.
I'm sorry to hear that you're in the hospital, but I'm glad you enjoyed the game. Super Mario World, yeah, that was a good one. I like that one too. Very fun, very fun. That's the one that introduced Yoshi. Let's stop that.
Knights Around.
Okay, Knights Around. I do not remember this game, but it looked like Golden Axe with better graphics overlay, I think. Hey, way to go, baby, way to go. I'm glad you beat it. Did you enjoy playing the game, beating it with you like that? I mean, that's pretty cool. You play Castlevania too? Cool, cool. That's good to know. These kind of games, I just have fascination with them for some reason. But yeah, this looks like a Golden Axe reskin, possibly.
Released for the Super Nintendo in 1994, and drew controversy for its historical inaccuracies and depictions of violence. The game based
A video game back in the 80s or 90s. How historically accurate do you want it to be?
loosely on the Arthurian legend, reimagined King Arthur, Lancelot, and Percival as brawling warriors on a quest to unite Britain, often resorting to brutal combat to defeat enemies. Many critics argue that its portrayal of well-known historical and mythological features in an action-heavy beat-em-up format diminished the integrity of the Arthurian legend. The game's focus on hack-and-slash action, where characters slaughter hordes of enemies, was seen as glorifying violence and reducing complex historical narratives into a simplistic...
I think that was glorifying violence. I had to see what I thought about Street Fighter then. You know what I mean?
offer brutal experience. This raised questions about the appropriateness of using historical figures as protagonists in what was essentially an arcade-style game. Additionally, Knights of the Realm was controversial for the level of violence depicted in the game, especially given its release on a console that was still heavily marketed to children. Though the Super Nintendo had seen other violent titles before, Knights
Oh yeah, the original Doom. Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
of the Realm featured a medieval setting where characters dispatched enemies with swords, axes, and other bladed weapons.
Or Duke Nukem. Remember that one? Always had the whole hack and slash or shooting gory stuff. They also had pixelated babes there too.
In a way some parents found too graphic. The glorification of combat and lack of any moral consequences for the character's actions drew criticism, with some reviewers pointing out that the game trivialized violence by making it the primary means of achieving heroic goals. Despite the controversy, however, the game still managed to find a fan base that appreciated its cooperative gameplay, challenging mechanics, and the thrill of embodying the legendary knights.
Oh, Shadowrun. Oh my god, I almost forgot about this game. This was like one of the first video games based off a tabletop role-playing game. Oh. Neat.
Shadowrun, released for the Super Nintendo in 1993, garnered controversy due to its dark themes and its mature take on the cyberpunk genre, a stark departure from the family-friendly games that characterized much of the console's library. Set in a dystopian future where technology, magic, and corporate power intertwine, Shadowrun features mature storylines involving assassinations, conspiracies, and dealing with criminal syndicates. The game's gritty tone and emphasis on underworld activities, including scenes involving drug dealers and violent street gangs.
You know, there's a modern version of the game still around. It's called Cyberpunk. I'm sure you guys have seen that or played it. This is basically the great-grandfather of that game. It comes from the same world and everything.
Left many parents uneasy. The game's bleak setting, filled with moral ambiguity, assassins for hire, and themes of corruption, also raised concerns about whether such content was appropriate for younger audiences. Another point of contention was Shadowrun's portrayal of magic and cybernetics in the context of a criminal underworld, which some found problematic. Its depiction of magic, mixed with futuristic technology in a world overrun by corporate greed and moral decay, resonated deeply with older gamers, but unsettled those who worried about its potential influence on young players. The game's cyberpunk narrative wasn't just a simple adventure. It required players
Feels like it's just a few games that particular groups do a big fit about. Doesn't make them any more controversial than the next game so far, I don't think. You know, just people being nitpicky about stuff, trying to say they're trying to corrupt the uses at time. Silly, it was silly then and it's silly now.
to navigate moral gray areas, often making choices that involved violence or deception. This level of complexity and mature content was uncommon on the Super Nintendo, making Shadowrun both a controversial and pioneering title for the console. Despite the controversy, Shadowrun earned a loyal following for its intricate storytelling, detailed world building, and an innovative take on RPG mechanics, securing its place as a cult classic in the retro gaming community.
Yeah, all tabletop role-playing games had a controversy about them, right? They keep popping up over the years too. And just because a particular felon or whatever played role-playing games, all of a sudden that's what caused them to do it. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And anything, stuff like that helps people because it helps create a relief for stuff like that. You know what I mean? Don't know if I'm articulating that properly, but it's like the same way with music, right? You ever listen to a song, you really get into it, right? And you feel better after the song? That's because your body needed that particular release. It happens a lot with melody music. right? People get that relief they need to be able to relax.
Lethal Enforcers.
Lethal Enforcers, released for the Super Nintendo in 1994, and was a lightning rod for controversy, primarily due to its graphic depiction of gun violence and its use of
Oh, I remember this. Try and play with that super scope. That was kind of weird, but been better off the light gun than that sugar that thing they gave us with it.
a light gun controller. As the first-person shooter, Lethal Enforcers puts players in the role of a police officer navigating high-stakes crime scenes, where the goal was to shoot down armed criminals
Hey, a
while
Firebird.
avoiding innocent bystanders. What made it particularly controversial was its realistic portrayal of modern-day law enforcement and the stark imagery of shooting human targets, a subject that sparked debates about whether such content was appropriate, especially on a console.
I'll get back a little high. We're on controversial NES games now. Right now, we're looking at a light gun game that is controversial for having human-like targets. Although, with most shooters, you got human targets anyway, so I don't know why this one's special, but whatever. It didn't have any blood in it.
Largely seen as family-friendly. The ability to use the Super Scope, or the just-released Justifier light gun accessory, further intensified criticism, as some felt that mimicking the action of aiming and shooting made the game more visceral and unsettling, potentially glorifying the use of firearms.
You know, they had a light gun with regular NES. I don't think it was any more controversial than this thing. Just to their times, I guess. Just to be more nitpicky about crap. Try to, in a way, push gun regulations on the kids in some form, which is weird if you ask me, but whatever.
The controversy also extended to the game's perceived influence on younger audiences. The early 1990s was a period when debates about the impact of violent video games were reaching new heights, and Lethal Enforcers became part of this larger conversation. Parents and advocacy groups expressed concern that the realistic graphics, digitized human targets, and the simulation of law enforcement shootouts could desensitize players to violence. Moreover, critics argued that the game's emphasis on shoot-first gameplay blurred the line between entertainment and real-life issues around policing and use of force. Although Lethal Enforcers attracted a following among those who enjoyed arcade-style shooters, its controversies contributed to growing calls for stricter content ratings in video games, making it a key title in the debate over violence in gaming during the Super Nintendo era.
Okay, Crazy Chase. I did not know this game. I never played it, never heard of it. So I'm interested to see what's so controversial about it.
Kid Clown and Crazy Chase, released for the Super Nintendo in 1994, was an unexpected source of controversy, primarily due to its portrayal of cartoonish violence and the somewhat unsettling depiction of its protagonist's repeated misfortunes. The game follows Kid Clown as he desperately tries to disarm a bomb before it goes off, all while navigating a chaotic world filled with traps and hazards that frequently send him sprawling. The slapstick nature of the game, featuring exaggerated pratfalls, explosions, and injury, prompting concern among some parents who felt that the constant depiction of a character being hurt for comedic effect sent a problematic message to younger audiences. While cartoons have long used slapstick as a source of humor, the repetitive...
I'd rather say people that complain about Looney Tunes, you know what I mean? Looney Tunes is a source of slapstick comedy for, I don't know, years at that point. I'd probably say people complain about that, complain about this.
nature of the mishaps in Kid Clown seemed to cross a line for those who felt it might normalize dangerous situations and desensitize children to pain. Further adding to the controversy was the portrayal of Kid Clown's desperation throughout the game, which included constant expressions of fear and distress. This sense of urgency and panic, while adding a unique level of tension to the gameplay, was unsettling to some players and parents alike. Unlike other platformers of the time, which often depicted brave heroes tackling their challenges head-on, Kid Clown instead emphasized a sense of vulnerability and helplessness as the character barely escaped peril after peril. Some critics argued that the game's frantic tone and relentless pace, paired with its visual gags centered on Kid Clown's constant suffering, made it emotionally stressful rather than enjoyable for its intended younger audience.
I don't think that's the case. I mean, come on, just a cute little game. People are reading way too much into it, you know what I mean? Besides, a lot of people don't like clowns to begin with, so hey, maybe I could try the clown audience, who knows?
Despite this, Kid Clown and Crazy Chase developed a niche following that appreciated its unconventional take on the platform genre, quirky humor, and challenging gameplay.
Out of this world. I think I heard of this, but I don't think I've ever played it. So, I don't know. Let's see what's so controversial about this one now.
Out of This World, or also known as Another World, was released for the Super Nintendo in 1992 and quickly became a source of controversy due to its mature themes, unsettling atmosphere, and the high level of difficulty. Unlike most games of its time, Out of This World took a cinematic approach to storytelling, presenting players with an alien world full of dangers, where the protagonist, Lester, is frequently subjected to violent and often graphic deaths. These deaths were depicted in a raw, unfiltered way that shocked many players, with Lester meeting grisly fates such as drowning, being impaled, or torn apart by alien creatures. The game starts.
Yeah, I can see how that'd be unsettling to a younger audience. I can see that one. But it's still not anything new we've ever seen a game before. Okay. Alright, guys, you don't have eye issues, right? So, you ever see my eyes acting weird? It's because I have eye issues. Hey, I just took another drink. Sorry about that. But, I know it may freak some of you out, but I don't really realize I'm blinking that much sometimes, and I apologize for that. Just be aware of that. My eye being blind on my character is not a static choice. That is something that's true in real life, so yeah.
Our portrayal of vulnerability and death in a hostile environment was a significant departure from the more sanitized presentation of action and adventure
Nah, we just someone trying to be a drama queen on Kick, that's all. I feel like I had to explain this again, so.
that was typical on the Super Nintendo, making some parents uncomfortable with its graphic realism. Another point of controversy was the game's dark and often unsettling tone, which stood in contrast to the more vibrant and cheerful games that defined the platform. The lonely atmosphere, complete with minimal dialogue and a haunting soundtrack, conveyed an overwhelming sense of isolation and hopelessness as Lester navigates a world where almost everything is trying to kill him. This created a uniquely intense experience that was praised by some for its artistic vision, but criticized by others for being too bleak and emotionally taxing for younger players.
Right. Well, I think a lot of it too at the time, games didn't really have a ranking system either. I mean, yeah, they kind of generally did, but not like it is now, so. It's not like Jaws. If Jaws came out now, it'd be definitely rated R. But at the time, when Jaws came out, it only got PG-13. So, go figure.
The combination of sophisticated storytelling, mature themes, and challenging gameplay pushed the boundaries of what was expected from a Super Nintendo title, leading to debates about what.
Yeah, not really that much back then, though. I mean, sure, a couple games had a mature rating, but most didn't even have a rating. That wasn't standardized till oh my god, late 90s, early 2000s maybe? I was thinking when they finally standardized it. I could be wrong about that too, so if I am, please forgive me.
Whether games like Out of This World were suitable for a console still largely marketed to children and families. Despite these controversies, the game remains a cult classic, celebrated for its pioneering cinematic storytelling and its influence on later generations of narrative-driven games.
And now, this message.
Before we move on to the next part of our list, and since you've made it this far, I'd love to know what you think of the video so far. Are there any controversial games that we've talked about that really piqued your interest, or maybe brought back some memories? Sound off in the comments below. I love hearing your thoughts. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps out the channel and makes sure I can keep bringing you more content like this. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Alright, enough stalling. Let's get back to the list.
There we go. Super Star Wars. How is Star Wars controversial? I don't know. That's new one on me.
Super Star Wars, released for the Super Nintendo in 1992, sparked controversy due to its punishing difficulty and the liberties it took with the iconic Star Wars storyline. The game, based on Star Wars A New Hope, was known for its challenging gameplay with relentless enemies and unforgiving platforming sections. Many players, especially younger ones, found it excessively hard to progress without losing numerous lives, leading to frustration. The game's difficulty was seen by some as a barrier to entry, making it less accessible to casual players and those who simply wanted to experience the Star Wars universe in video game form. This difficulty...
It's only controversial because of the difficult gameplay. Okay. I mean, I can see where games not being made for beginners, right? Okay, well, I'll keep that in mind, thank you. But being controversial just because it's hard to play, I don't think that should be right, but... Yeah, some of the best games to play are the hardest to play, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter getting used to it, getting an idea of it. And hey, if you master a hard game, you master any game.
Difficulty was not entirely uncommon for games of the era, but in the context of Star Wars, a franchise beloved by audiences of all ages, many felt that it should have been more approachable to match the expectations of its diverse fanbase. Another point of contention was how the game altered some key plot elements and introduced action sequences not present in the original film. To create a more exciting and varied gameplay experience, the developers added numerous enemies, elaborate platforming sections, and vehicles that were not part of the original A New Hope storyline. For purists and devoted Star Wars fans, these deviations felt unnecessary and detracted from the author.
No word to gatekeepers. Yeah, it's a video game, let them have some liberties with it, right? I mean, it's not like it's unplayable or something like that. They just added stuff to make it more exciting. I don't see anything wrong with that, you know what I mean? Just people gatekeeping at this point.
Authentic feel of the movie. Instead of focusing on the character development and the emotional weight of the narrative, the game often opted for frenetic action, which some felt overshadowed.
Jurassic Park, yes. Can't play Jurassic Park Pinball Machine game too? That's another good one. Although technically you can only find that in an arcade or pinball machine place, but that was fun.
Of the story elements. Despite these controversies, Super Star Wars was well received by many for its impressive graphics, engaging action, and faithful recreation.
See, that's what I remember, right? I remember this game being very well received, so it kind of surprised me it was on the controversial list. It really did. But it is what it is,
the
I guess.
atmosphere of the film, making it both a beloved classic and a divisive experience for fans of the Star Wars franchise.
Lawnmower Man. Oh, this is based on the horror movie. I can see how this would be controversial. I never played this game because I was never a fan of the movie, but that's just me. Does that include the newer ones? The not Jurassic Park, what do they call it now? But you know what I mean. Jurassic World, does that include the Jurassic World stuff too? Chainsaw Man, ha. No, this is Lawnmower Man. You ever seen the Lawnmower Man? It's a horror movie about a criminal who gets turned into a genius. He starts out stunted mentally, but kind of gets turned to a genius, goes to the yard. It's really weird, but at the same time, I wasn't a big fan of it. So I never played the game.
The Lawnmower Man, released for the Super Nintendo in 1993, became a controversial title due to its heavy reliance on virtual reality themes and the mature content adapted from the film it was based on. The game was an adaptation of the sci-fi thriller film of the same name, which itself was inspired by a Stephen King story. The film's mature themes of mind control, experimentation.
So say you have a Stephen King story in a video game. I can see how this is controversial. I'm not even going to deny that because Stephen King has his own books and very controversial stuff. Like in the It books, I'm not going to get into it, but if you read it, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, just keep that in mind. This one, I do not disagree with at all. Stephen King horror movie, definitely going to be controversial.
And the potential dangers of technology were carried over into the game, making it feel surprisingly dark for a Super Nintendo release. The game featured sequences where players experienced the virtual reality segments, which were designed to stimulate a digital world. For many parents, the intense visuals and the overarching theme of losing control to technology were unsettling, especially for a console marketed to a younger audience. The complex storyline, touching on themes of unethical experimentation and psychological manipulation, stood in stark contrast to the more straightforward, family-friendly titles on the system. Adding to the controversy was the gameplay itself, which mixed standard platforming levels with first-person virtual reality sequences that were quite disorienting. These VR-inspired sections, with their digitized graphics and abstract environments, were unlike anything seen on the Super Nintendo at the time. They were intended to capture the futuristic feel of the movie, but instead left many players feeling overwhelmed or even confused. Critics argued that these sequences, combined with the dark narrative, made the game a strange fit for the Super Nintendo, which had cultivated a reputation for its accessible, colorful, and fun experiences.
I don't know how to react to this game. Like I said, I've never had any interest in this game or the movie. So I'm sorry if I'm just sitting here watching it. I wish I could think of something to say, but I really have no input on this. Please forgive me for
The
that.
Lawnmower Man's darker tone, coupled with its disorienting gameplay and mature themes, made it a polarizing title that raised questions about how far games could push the envelope on a platform associated with more family-oriented entertainment. Despite this,
Yeah, I can see how they want more family-oriented stuff, right? But at the same time, this game isn't marketed toward kids. It was meant for adults of a very specific taste, right? So not everybody likes horror movies, right? There's something that kids shouldn't see. So we know exactly who the audience is, and it's not kids.
it found a niche audience intrigued by its experimental take on virtual reality and its ambitious, albeit unsettling, adaptation of the film.
Oh Lord, Combat, here we go. I kind of expect this would come up here. One of the bloodiest fight games of all time, Mortal Kombat, with the fatalities, the brutalities, animalities. If you ever played it, you know what I mean.
Mortal Kombat on the Super Nintendo released in 1993 and became one of the most infamous games of its time.
Scorpion was my favorite character to play. What about you guys? Oh, your favorite character, let me know.
due to its intense violence and iconic fatalities. The original arcade version had already caused an uproar for its use of digitized actors and over-the-top graphic violence, but the controversy deepened with its transition to home consoles, especially when it came to Nintendo's approach to censorship. Unlike the Sega Genesis version, which featured a cheat code to enable the game's signature blood and gore, the Super Nintendo version replaced the red blood with gray sweat and significantly toned down the brutal finishing moves.
I forgot they did that on this. Yeah, that was a major buzzkill for Mortal Kombat fans of the arcade, right? So that was your favorite too, or Raiden? Oh, Raiden was another good one. Yes, indeed. Sub-Zero.
This decision was made in line with Nintendo's family-friendly image, but it sparked a backlash among fans of the arcade original, who felt that the toned-down version was an inferior product. The lack of gore led to widespread criticism that the Super Nintendo version didn't live up to the expectations of the original experience, causing many players to flock to the Genesis version instead. Despite the censorship, Mortal Kombat on the Super Nintendo remained controversial for its inherent themes of violence and death. Even with the graphical changes, the core of the game still revolved around martial arts combat and the goal of overpowering an opponent, often ending with a dramatic finishing move. Many parents and advocacy groups at the time were alarmed by the game's premise, fearing it would desensitize children to violence. The controversy surrounding Mortal Kombat on both the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis became a significant catalyst in the push for a formal video game rating system, ultimately leading to the creation of the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, the ESRB.
Yeah, and there it is. That was because of Mortal Kombat that they made it finally, or standardized it. Like I said, some games at the time carry a mature label, but they weren't required to up until that was established. And they just refined over the years, so yeah.
The debates around Mortal Kombat highlighted the growing divide between gamers seeking authentic, unfiltered experiences and the broader concerns about protecting younger audiences from mature content. Nintendo's approach to censoring the game ended up being a pivotal moment in gaming history, underscoring the challenges of balancing creative freedom with social responsibility.
Wolfenstein. Who remembers Wolfenstein? Come on now, they remember Wolfenstein. Yeah, I know, right? The people back then from the days gave it have a heart attack, wouldn't they? But Wolfenstein 3D, who remembers this? Go around shooting Nazis all day. Some say that this was the death of certain game systems. Some say it was the birth of the whole shooting genre. Cause that and Doom, I think, came out around the same time. So
Wolfenstein 3D on the Super Nintendo was one of the most controversial titles of its time, primarily due to its overt depictions of Nazi imagery and violence, as well as the significant changes it underwent during the porting process. Originally released on the PC in 1992, Wolfenstein 3D was one of the first games to popularize the first-person shooter genre, but it was also notorious for its graphic violence and its setting within Nazi Germany, complete with swastikas, SS officers, and even a showdown with Adolf Hitler. When the game was adapted for the Super Nintendo in 1994, Nintendo made drastic changes to comply with their family-friendly guidelines. All swastikas and references to the Third Reich were removed, and the German Shepherd guard dogs were replaced by giant mutant rats, making the game somewhat surreal in comparison to its original version. These changes were intended to soften the game's imagery and avoid glorifying.
but that was the whole point, right? You're fighting the Third Reich. That was the whole point of the game. Why would you remove the stuff you're trying to destroy? It's like you're trying to preserve it instead of, never mind. Just nostalgia getting the better of me. Sorry.
Any historical hate symbols, but it sparked debate among fans and critics who felt that the alterations undermined the authenticity of the game's historical context. In addition to the censorship of Nazi symbols, the Super Nintendo version of Wolfenstein 3D faced criticism for the heavy reduction of blood and gore. The original game was known for its gritty realism, featuring pixelated pools of blood, injured enemies, and the brutal depiction of warfare. Nintendo, determined to
Yep.
uphold their family
That is so true, right? They, if you actually hit somebody and they kill them, they would actually limp a little bit if you ever pay attention to it.
friendly image, removed all visible blood from the game, and instead used creative workarounds to lessen the violent impact. Despite these changes, the core of Wolfenstein 3D remained focused on gunning down enemies, which drew concern from parents and advocacy groups who argued that even a toned-down version of the game was inappropriate for a console that appealed to children. The controversy surrounding the Super Nintendo port highlighted the struggles of adapting mature games for a broader audience, and the compromises made raised questions about creative integrity and how far companies would go to sanitize content for younger players. Nevertheless,
Yeah, but this isn't made for younger players, though. That's the thing. Why are you sanitizing it for younger players when the game's not meant for younger players? Right? It's meant for adults. I don't get that.
Wolfenstein 3D maintained its legacy as an iconic and pioneering first-person shooter, albeit in a version that was a shadow of the original's brutal and historically charged vision.
Here we go. Doom. One of the most bladed games of all time. Right? You get eyeballs floating around and everything. How much you want to bet they sanitize this too?
Doom for the Super Nintendo released in 1995 and was undeniably controversial, primarily because of its intense violence, demonic imagery, and the overall dark tone. Originally developed for the PC in 1993, Doom quickly gained a reputation for pushing the limit of acceptable content in gaming, featuring graphic depictions of blood and guts, satanic symbols, and relentless demon slaying. When the game made its way to the Super Nintendo, it brought much of that controversial content along with it, shocking a wider console audience that wasn't accustomed to such levels of violence. The imageries of pentagrams, hellish landscapes, and the slaughter of grotesque monsters raised alarm among parents and advocacy groups who worried about the game's impact on younger players.
Poor church youth got their butt hurt. That's all it is. I think they'd be happy they're killing demons, you know? I can't make them all happy, I guess.
The moral panic around Doom was part of a broader cultural concern at the time regarding violent video games and their potential influence on impressionable audiences. Additionally, the technical limitations of the Super Nintendo hardware led to a version of Doom that many found frustrating and visually unappealing, adding to the fuel of the controversy. While the Super Nintendo port was an impressive technical achievement, considering it brought a demanding PC game to the 16-bit console, it came at the cost of significant compromises. The graphics were heavily pixelated, the frame rate was low, and the game
Yeah, the Super Nintendo was not meant to handle a game like this. It just didn't have the processing power, right? This game, for its time, required some of the most heavily processing power you can get a hold of. And to port that to a Super Nintendo, no reason why it was pixelated, so
gameplay
still a good game to play. I ain't gonna deny that.
felt more sluggish compared to the original. Despite these limitations, Doom retained its core themes of graphic violence and horror, which prompted debate about whether it was appropriate for the Super Nintendo platform, which had largely been known for its family-friendly content. The combination of unsettling imagery, aggressive action, and the lingering concerns about the game's performance led to a mixed reception. While some players appreciated the chance to play such an iconic game on their favorite console, others felt it was an ill fit for the Super Nintendo's audience, pushing boundaries that many believe should remain untouched in a system popular with younger players. And there you have it, some of the most
Okay, what do you guys think about that controversy list? Do you agree with someone? Do you disagree? You think something else should been up there?
controversial games that found their way onto the Super Nintendo. These titles were more than just entertainment, they were part of a broader cultural debate that shaped how we view video games today. Whether it was censorship, violence, mature themes, or just pushing technical boundaries, Each of these games played a role in expanding what gaming could be, even if they stirred up some heated debates along the way. The Super
Right.
Nintendo was more than colorful platformers and catchy tunes. It was also a canvas for creativity that sometimes shocked, provoked, and even challenged the norm. Hey
That is so true. So much stuff was coming out then. So much experimental stuff was awesome back then in the day, I guess.
everyone, thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear what you think. Did any of these controversial games stand out to you, or do you have any memories playing them back in the day? Let's get a discussion going in the comments below. If you liked this video, please leave a like. It helps more than you know. If you didn't, that other button seems to work pretty well too. If you're enjoying this type of content, consider subscribing and ringing the notification bell so you won't miss any future videos. If you would like to support the channel even further, think about becoming a channel member. You'll get exclusive perks and early access to videos, or check out the links in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Alright. That was 10 controversial Super Nintendo Entertainment System games by SNEStalgia. That was pretty cool, wasn't it, guys?